episode. This will be number 6 of the After Hours podcast. Here with me today, I have the winningest console esports coach in the history of esports, until you tell me wrong, Nick Ridgeway. So, thank you for coming on. This is
my pleasure.
Yeah, this is going to be, I think, a pretty fun one.
Oh yeah.
So how I'm trying to start all these off to kind of get a theme going is what was your first encounter in the esports space? Not necessarily your first job or anything, but like the first thing that you're like, ooh, that's esports. That's a thing. Let me, I like that.
My first encounter. Let's see. That's tough because I think my first encounter in esports was playing in the very first League of Legends LCS qualifiers.
Oh wow. Okay.
So like when they announced that they were going to be doing the professional league. And it wasn't just going to be, ESL tournaments and things like that.
Sure.
I competed in those qualifiers. Competitive gaming, though, I was playing, when I was 13 years old, I was playing game battles matches with buddies on Gears of War. So It's like, it wasn't really an esport, but it was like the blossoming start of an esport, I guess. So, I would say, you can look at it either way, starting off as a competitor either way.
Yeah. So your first game was Gears or was it League? Or
Gears, well, Halo.
Okay, yeah.
But everyone played, literally everyone played Halo. And then I actually hated Gears when my friends first showed me Gears in like middle school. I was like 7th or 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
And every time I'd go over to his house, he's like, let's play Gears. And I was like, I really don't like this game. And like, I was to the point where I didn't want to go over to his house and hang out with my best friend because all he wanted to do was play this game. And we played through the campaign kind of. And then there was one day where he was forcing me to play the multiplayer. And it was Gears of War 1. And it was on the map Canals for people who've played Gears. And we learned about a glitch where you could like run your character, which normally makes your character not able to do anything.
Right.
But if you like hit the button to run and the button to chainsaw at the same time, your character would run with the chainsaw active.
Yes.
And then if you ran into somebody like while you're running, they would just pop.
Yeah.
And like it would cancel all the animation and everything. It was just called the chainsaw glitch. And like I just got addicted to just doing that to people because it's so fun just running at somebody, they're shooting you and then they just pop.
Yeah.
And so I ended up buying the game and then kind of got more and more into it and made some friends through it, and it just turned into something I got addicted to really quickly.
Yeah. So back then I'm sure coaching wasn't, the norm, or maybe not the norm, but like there wasn't coaching everywhere in esports at the time.
Yeah.
At least from what I saw. Did you come in initially as a player and you like wanted to compete? Like how did that kind of, evolve?
Yeah, I was like I said, playing game battles matches with friends. It got to the point where I was, one of the more known people on game battles for Gears. I wasn't like, the number one name that everyone talked about, but I was finding my way on, rank 1 teams pretty frequently.
Sure.
And I went to a few MLG events actually and never placed too well, but I managed to join VVV Gaming. Okay. And at the time they were like the big dogs of like the Gears of War scene and kind of MLG space. And they were always like my favorite. I watched all their pro teams and so I was super excited to be like one of their quote unquote pro players for Gears of War, like one of the guys out there representing them on Gears. And, it wasn't really pro at the time. It was, I was given a t-shirt to wear at events and, wore the clan tag in game. But, it was just, like that was like kind of what got me that fix, was competing and like getting that kind of that notoriety of being part of VVV. And that turned into me like striving to compete and play more. And it didn't really shift towards the staffing side, like coaching and managing, until I got into league and I was in college and time was much more restricted because, you have your class workloads and things like that. So
Gears through high school and then into college, and then you transitioned to league.
Yeah.
What was your league career or what is that your experience with League of Legends like? Because I actually was just talking to Josh about this before. He's like, Nick played League, right? I was like, I know he plays League now. He played. I was like, oh, so
Yeah,
like, this is.
I've played since season 1.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I've been playing a long time. It was actually funny because MLG dropped Gears of War from the pro circuit.
Right.
And so I stuck with it and just, drowned myself in game battle matches. And I was now at college where I had what I was calling Jesus internet. So I was out connecting everybody, and it made me that much better online for game battles matches. And then Gears of War 3 came out. Wasn't a huge fan. Stuck with Gears of War 2 for a little bit longer. And then my grades tanked. And it was like my first semester of my freshman year. So I was home for break, for the winter break, and we got my grades, and my mom's like, all right, your Xbox isn't going back with you. And I was like, okay. So I got back to my dorm, and I asked my roommates what games were free for PC. And League of Legends was one of the ones that came up. I actually, a lot of people don't know this, but there's a game called Trackmania, which was a free PC game. Now it's on Steam, but it was a free PC game at the time. And I actually immersed myself in Trackmania for a month. And it's basically like Hot Wheels on steroids.
Oh, okay. I remember this game.
And it's super finicky controls. You have to be very accurate. And it's all about everybody who's on the course with you is just a ghost. You have to just get the best time. So you're given 3 minutes on a track, and you have to get the best time in those 3 minutes. And you can try over and over again to try to set your best time, and then whoever gets the the best times, that's how you're ranked at the end of the track. And I was actually really good. I was, after a while, I was competing the best players in Brazil were the people who I was struggling against, and those were the only ones. Everyone else I could beat.
Wow.
And then I just kind of got bored of it because there was only so many tracks, and then you had to pay for extra content, and I couldn't do that because then I'd kind of get caught gaming. Yeah. And so my roommate introduced me to League of Legends. He was like, it's free, you never have to pay for anything, which I'm hundreds of dollars in at this point.
Aren't we all?
And I just fell in love with League and learning the game and the strategy, and it was how it's changed so frequently, and that really opened the door for esports for me.
Sure. So at what point did you played probably on the more casual side in the beginning, I'm sure, and then at one point you were like how did you end up on the LCS qualifier stage, or was it online? I'm sure.
Yeah, it was online. I didn't make it to the part where we were on stage, unfortunately. The team we lost to did. Yeah. So I got really addicted to the competing side, and I started off playing with my roommates, but then they started to kind of not care as much, and I was still taking it super serious, and it just got to the point where I was playing with people who were just really good. And I don't know, to this day, I don't know why they played with me, because, League has its in-game ranks, and I think I was gold at the time, and I was playing with diamond and platinum players.
Oh, wow.
And this is back in the number-based ranking system, where it was now there's all these tiers. Back then, everybody just had a number, and once your number got over 1,300, you were gold. Once it got over 1,600, you were platinum, and you got plus 10 to 15 every time you won a game. Okay. So it was a grind to rank up. And I was playing with people who were way better than me, but they respected me because I always played that in-game shot caller role, and I was the one organizing everything. And I just found myself on a team with really good people, and we were doing really well. And we made it to the point where we were in the qualifiers, and then we got destroyed by people who were all better than all 5 of us. I think my only highlight is we won an online tournament with MLG. It was a Dr. Pepper $5,000 ladder. Oh. And we played a few season matches to get ourselves in the playoffs, and we won all those, and then we won the playoffs. And so I collected a nice check as a college student who was gaming.
That's cool.
And then my grades started to suffer again. And I had to make a decision, do I keep playing even though I'm not a high rank, or do I just kind of take a step back, focus on school, and do everything that I was doing outside of playing the game? So, I was the one organizing practices and getting everybody's schedules together and making sure everyone was on time and scheduling the scrims and kind of dictating the flow of everything.
Right.
And I realized that was a role that I could do without playing. Like, let somebody who is better than me play the game, who has more time than me. I'll still organize everything for them so that all they have to do is play. And that worked out for me. I was able to work with people who were way better than the team that I was on, and still have like this role and kind of get my competitive fix, because, you know, I'm watching their scrimmages while I'm doing, you know, my homework or writing a paper or something. So like I'm watching them compete and cheering them on and yelling at my monitor and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. It gave me that competitive fix.
Yeah.
And that worked out for me. It opened a lot of doors. I met a lot of people, and I just kept moving up in terms of like the level of players that I was working with. And I think there was 3 different challenger teams that I was managing and working with that played in the NACS qualifiers, which before they franchised, there was the challenger like rank, and then there was qualifiers to play in the challenger series, the NACS. Yep. And then the top teams from that, like the top 2 teams from that, would then play the bottom LCS teams to then go up to the LCS.
Okay. Yes.
So I was working with like right below the NACS. Okay. So challenger players, top tier talent, that was up and coming and just trying to get them to the next level. And we failed it 3 times. One of those rosters shouldn't have. Every single one of those players went on to the LCS.
Oh wow.
All but one of them. He retired. One of them actually is now an Overwatch pro, Bishu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was one of my players.
Oh, wow.
So I worked with amazing talent, and I think most of the challenger players that I worked with made it to the LCS or NACS at some point after I went back to Gears.
Sure.
But that was like where I kind of really got a taste of like, okay, like this is something that I can do. I wasn't making a penny for it.
Right.
But like the structure was starting to build. Riot was doing more and more to like professionalize League of Legends. And I was thinking, okay, this could be a career. Like I don't have to go into game design and development to work with video games. There's this side. And I saw so many other games were lacking that side, and Gears of War being one of them, and kind of touched back to, where I started. So that's when I reached out to my current team.
So you pieced together your current team before you got back into Gears?
Well, they were playing together. It was Lava, Explosive, Mental, and Solars. Those were the 4 players. They were playing. They had just come together as a team, and I actually first reached out to one of my old friends. He was playing with the team that went on to be Envy, like our rivals. Sure. And I started with them because I was working for an org under League, and said, hey, I can get you guys the number 1 Gears team, or top 2 Gears team for free. Yeah. And like just send them some jerseys. Yeah. And so that's kind of how me getting back into it started. And then there was some stuff that I just didn't click with that team. And then I kind of backed away from Gears a little bit. I was like, okay, the community's changed. The people are a little bit different now. I don't know them as much. And then I saw this team, and it was, all kids who were 16 and 17. And I knew they were young because I recognized some of their names. And I knew they were like 12 back when I was competing. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this team is going to be really good, because they've been really good for a while. And like now the talent's all on one team together, and I know they're friends. Right. So I think this is a team that I can do something with, and I can help get to that. Even if like I just help them get an org, then know that like they're not getting taken advantage of. I'd like that. So I reached out to them. It was like September something of 2015. I reached out to Mental on Twitter. I sent him a DM, and I was like, hey, I manage and coach in League of Legends. I have a lot of contacts with a lot of orgs. I see that you guys are going to be really good. You are really good, and you're going to be great. And I want to help you guys get to that level and make sure you're not taken advantage of if you want my help. Yeah. And apparently they talked about it as a team, and we're like, yeah, we're already talking to some orgs, but feel free to help us out. Yeah. That's literally how it started. Wow.
It's crazy. Like, it's crazy hearing like different stories about esports and how people got involved, or like what their like kind of turning point is or whatever. Like, 90% of the time it's just like putting yourself out there. You
Mm-hmm.
go and what do you like? And I do coaching and managing, and you guys need a coach and manager, and they go on to be the winningest console esports. You know, it's like, it's just crazy how some things like kind of just fall in line like that. I think it's super cool.
Well, I think it's like a lot of preparation, like on an individual level, and then meets like luck.
Yeah. Obviously,
like good timing.
Obviously,
kind of thing.
it's not just one of those like you ask enough people that someone says, you put in the work. Like you covered a little bit of it, but obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it. You know, don't get the wrong idea. It's not just get on Twitter and DM someone and you win.
Yeah, please don't just like start DMing us and be like, hey, can I like design jerseys for you? Or hey, can I come work for Optic? Because I do get those DMs a lot, and it's not about like just like, I guess like they say shoot your shot. It's not about like shooting 400 shots. It's about like calculating that one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So,
you know, you want to shoot a shot. I don't even really like that term, but like
I know
you want to make that, you take that chance on something that you know you want to work with. You don't want to just be like, oh, this is cool for a day, and then like I don't even want to do this type. You know, so yeah. Well, at any rate, it's funny how a lot of those stories start with, well, we just kind of talked on Twitter, but yeah. So obviously there's a long history there. September of 2015 till now is almost 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all have been core. What is he? Core 4, core 3.
Pretty much a core 2.
Yeah.
Because Solars ended up leaving the team for personal reasons, and then we stayed on with Lava, and then Gears of War 4 made it go from 4v4 to 5v5.
Right.
So we brought on Summons, who was like a kind of young gun amateur player, who everybody knew because he made a really big name for himself in game battles and stuff like that. So we brought him on, and then it's been the three of us, or the three of them and me, Explosive, Mental, Summons, and myself, since then. So we've kept that core, and we're pretty close. I mean, I call them my family.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I feel like that's the only way, you know, you work, but it's training. It's kind of a little bit of a different feel, but you day in and day out, like, you know, I know I do. They take like a break, right? It's like in between events, it's like a week or whatever.
Yeah.
You just take a hard break, which is a good reset. I don't know if a lot of teams do that, but I remember you talking about it once. There was one time at the office or whatever. And I think that's good. I think it's good to reset. It's good to get away from everybody, but then you come back and you're ready to work. I think that's what off seasons are like in the NFL or the MLB or whatever. So I think that's important. But
Definitely
with all that, you know, being a family and not just being a couple coworkers who are all nasty at Gears of War is good. Like you gotta have that. What's the word?
Like cohesiveness,
synergy, and like
Yeah. I mean, it helps us, like having that relationship out of game. I think is like one of the missing pieces of the puzzle that a lot of teams fall short on. We're able to talk to each other in a way that like family can. Like we can criticize each other a little bit harsher in the heat of the moment, and that could tear some teams apart. But for us, it's like, okay, like I know I've been with these guys since 2005, so you know, if I'm saying like you need to not do that as we're on main stage, then they know, okay, yeah, he sees something that I'm not seeing, I need to not do that. And same thing when they talk to each other. There's been like in Vision, clips of Gilbert's like motivational speeches, and it's something he's really good at. You know, when he gets fired up, he becomes like the team captain that all teams should have. Right. And he really steps up to the plate in giving those motivational speeches of like, hey, look, everybody, you're messing up, but I know you're better, and I believe in you to be better, and you're going to be better when we get back on that stage, and I'm going to be there to support you when you're better. And it's like that's the kind of stuff that like a lot of teams don't have. Sure.
But do you think that like family vibe is not necessarily there because I don't know how much it is now in Gears, but I know back a while ago, like a lot of online, or not a lot of esports in general was more like everybody lived in their own state, and they'd come together for a LAN and they'd go back home. I know your guys all you guys kind of have been together for a while, like in the same state, like in the same city in most cases. Yeah. Do you think that has a big effect on it, or is it more than just that?
I think it helps us, moving to Texas where we could all be in the same apartment complex, and now 4 of them are in the same house. it all like plays a part in terms of like, you know, building those relationships out of the game. But even before then, you know, when I first joined the team, I got added to their Skype group.
Sure.
And there would be times where I would like wake up in the morning and, you know, I owned a donut shop at the time. So I was up at 5 a.m. and they would still be in a call that started 2 p.m. the day before.
Damn.
And I would like see it on my phone and I would like jump in and they'd still be like chatting and having fun. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'd hang up and then I'd get home from like work and they would still be in the call. Like, even if it's just one of them, it was almost like having Discord before Discord.
Yeah,
like,
I remember.
They just like left Skype calls open for, I think, like days and weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Where they would just like, even if they were like all like watching shows on their own or something like that, they were still like hanging out with each other or like vibing with each other. So I think that was always something special that I saw in this team specifically. Like, it wasn't just like they came together for business hour. It was like they truly enjoyed being around each other. And like when I first saw that, when I first got that experience, I was like, holy crap, this is something special.
Yeah. I think that's definitely important to have that family vibe and, you know, wanting to be with other people, you know. I think that's definitely important. So in that, you know, that kind of day-to-day aspect, like what is your role as a coach aside from like making sure people make scrims and like the obvious stuff? Like, what else goes into being a coach? Because I feel like a lot of people don't see it. I, for one, obviously don't know a lot about it because, for one, I don't know too much about the gears space aside from like the public perspective of it. But like, what goes into your day-to-day as the coaching aspect of your role?
Yeah, when we're like in the heat of the moment, like, you know, we're preparing for an event or something like that, usually my days start with I'll get up, you know, take care of whatever personal stuff I need to do, and then while I'm eating breakfast or lunch or something like that, I will go over something recorded from the night before.
Sure.
So if there was like a map that I knew that we did poorly on, or if I know we did really well, but another team was streaming their scrims, I'll go check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Usually like I'll record other teams when they stream scrims because people delete their VODs because everyone's paranoid.
Yeah, sure.
Which I get.
Yeah.
But so I'll go like watch that and see if there's something like new that they're doing that we need to pay attention to or whatever the case may be. But it'll kind of more be like almost like a background noise. Like I'll have it on. I'm not like super focused analyzing it, but it's there, and I can kind of like multitask and like take care of other stuff. Because like at one point I was GM or assistant GM of optics, so I was doing that stuff while having like a scrim on or something. And that really helped me focus on like our comms. Like if I notice, because I'm listening to it all almost like it's a podcast like this. So if I hear like an argument start, I'll kind of go like, oh, okay, wait a minute, what? And then I'll go back and figure out what went wrong just by like listening to them or whatever the case may be. And then I was streaming. I'm still trying to get that schedule down, but I was streaming from 2 to 6. And then scrims would start at 6. So I'd turn off the stream and hop right into like whatever lobby they were in. All the scrims were ones that I set up and scheduled and like tried to do them a week in advance. So like they knew, okay, this week we have these teams on these days, and I would try to structure them where like we would have like a good team and like an okay team most days, and then there would be some days where it'd be like 2 really good teams, so that like we would have tough days and we'd have kind of easier days, or like a scrim where we could go really hard and then a scrim where we could kind of relax. And that let them have fun and not get bored with the whole process too.
Yeah.
Because they goof off more when they're playing teams they don't respect as much. And maybe that's like a bad thing to admit, but it works.
Yeah.
So I would have that, and we'd hop into scrims, and then I would focus on giving real-time criticism.
Sure.
So I would break down in real time, basically, what I mean is, you know, in that moment, what went wrong, rather than like going, okay, let's pause and let's go back and look at the replay. I'd be like, okay, like you guys lost that. Like, don't argue. You lost that because this guy did this and then you all did this and that was bad. You should have done this instead.
Yeah.
Which I actually learned pretty early on with these guys specifically is if I ask them questions that lead them towards the answer that I'm looking for, it works better.
Okay.
So instead of saying like, telling them 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
I go, well, do you think 2 + 2 is the same as 3 + 1?
Yeah.
And they go, well, yeah, it's 4. So yeah, that makes, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, that's a really dumbed down example.
Yeah.
But like, rather than just saying, no, you can't do that, you should do this, and acting like I know all, because I don't.
Right.
I would go, okay, well, do you think this might be a better option? And sometimes I'd be wrong. Sometimes they would be like, no, like, here's something like that was happening to me in the moment, and I might not have noticed it.
Right.
And that worked really well for these guys specifically, is, letting them have the conclusions. And I think they learn it better that way, because they're going through the thought process themselves rather than just being told what's right and what's wrong. It's like, okay, this is my idea, therefore I accept it, better than being told someone else's idea and having it forced on me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'll kind of do that in real time as the scrims go on.
Sure.
And I'll have the recording going so that I can kind of go back after scrims. And then just if there was like a moment, like a round that was kind of rough, or like a map that we lost, I have the blessing of, we don't lose a whole lot, even in scrims.
Yeah.
So if there was something that like I needed to pay attention to, then I could go back and do it. Or if there was something where they're like, hey, can you go back and take a look at this, Ash, and see if there was like what we did wrong or what we could have done better. Sometimes they do it like, hey, can you see what I did? I played bad that map, what went wrong? And sometimes it's the team.
Yeah.
That gives me the opportunity to do that after scrims or maybe the next day. And then when we start the practice, I can be like, okay, like, remember when you talked about this? Or like, here's something I want you to focus on. Sometimes I'll call for them to run drills. Like, for example, something that I haven't told anyone before, a drill that I've had them run in Gears, you can win either based off points.
Yep.
So like a King of the Hill kind of game, like first to so many points. Or you can win off capturing all 3 circles at the same time. It's called a 3-cap.
Yep.
Or a domination. So I would tell them at the start of every round, you have to win this round by points, or you have to win this round by 3-cap. And that would force them, when they were actively participating in it, which was most of the time, that would force them to either play at a certain pace. So like if they were completely winning the round, dominating, they could go for a 3-cap and close out that round. But I told them they have to win off points. It would force them to slow themselves down.
Right.
Rather than just pushing forward aggressively and winning the round, they had to go, okay, even though we killed them all, we have to set up, let them come on for respawn, and we'll do it again. And it would practice like a certain aspect of their game. If it was like, you need to win off a 3-cap, they could have a 60-point lead and know that they're going to win the round, but they still have to play with that like hurried aggression that could come crucial when we actually need that. Like if we're losing and we need that 3-cap.
Sure.
So just getting them comfortable with like a little game like that while we're scrimming, it became really helpful. And I think we saw results pretty early on. They got bored with it pretty quickly, but it was something that like kept their attention for like a week. And it definitely showed when we played in Boston.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. So Gears of War is mostly, I mean, it's all pretty much like a round based, similar to your, for people who don't know, similar to your Call of Duty Search and Destroy or your CSGO, back and forth. Is there like a predetermined, this is play A, this is play B, like, on play A, you go here, I go here, you go here, and like, is that how things work in Gears of War?
Yeah, there's so they call them the initials, like the initial strats.
Yeah.
So like when you spawn into a round, every round it changes, which is part of the funness, I guess, of Gears. Is not, even though like it's kind of stale at this point because the game's been around for so long and there hasn't been so many changes. With this game type escalation, every round the respawn timers increase by 2 seconds until the round 7 where they reset back to their original. So round 1 of a map, that you're going to come off, if you could make a mistake, you could die, but you're going to come off respawn pretty quickly.
Sure. And
it makes it harder to 3-cap, and it makes the game play a little bit faster pace.
Right.
Whereas around 6, where you're dead for 20 seconds and like you make a mistake, you're gone for a long time. People play more calculated. Okay. So those initial strategies can change depending on that. You can also, the losing team puts a weapon down after a round ends on the map. So then, you could put a rocket launcher in the middle of the map, and then now you have to run a strategy based on that variable. So we have, a whole book of strategies, not literal book, but of things that, you know, we run. We have our like base strategies, which are kind of like the defaults, and we usually stick to those. And then most of the trick strats that we run, which are kind of like the differences we make off that initial, a lot of the times it's just like I'll be playing around in like a custom lobby by myself or with a friend, and I'll be like, hey, there's this weird, like, not quite a bug, but like weird way this weapon interacts with this, or there's a cool angle here I've never seen anyone use. Can I build a strat around it? I'll make something up, and then I'll show it to them and be like, hey, let's try this in a scrim. And if it works, then we run it and have it like in our inventory. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so like there's a lot that we haven't even ever used, and the game's going away. But that's kind of the part that is like the most interesting to me, is like making up weird strats. Like I was never into chess, but it's kind of like playing chess, where like I have these like pieces.
Yeah.
Who I can like say, okay, here's what you're gonna do, and they're really good, so they can execute it well. And it's fun and interesting to see, you know, if it works out the way I picture it, or if the other team does something different that makes it mess up. But there's a lot of like variables and different strats to Gears.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, like I think in Call of Duty they call them break-offs or whatever, but it's definitely interesting to know, like, people who just look at esports as gaming and or whatever e-gaming that people call it, you know, that stuff. It's just like people don't know that there's that much that goes into it. I mean, if you walk in and your parents are watching a football game and you don't know anything about football, it looks like a 22 guys running around trying to hit each other as hard as they can.
Yeah.
You don't know that there's organized chaos, but Gears of War, just every video game is pretty much the same thing. Like there's thought that goes into it. These people put hours and hours and hours and hours into becoming better.
Definitely.
So that's, you know, it's interesting that there's more to it than I knew, obviously.
And I think like when you can understand, like when you play the game, in any game or any sport, it's easier for you to understand like the nuances that make the pros so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. Like for me, I watch as many esports as I can. There's some that I don't fully understand, or that I just struggle with. But like for the most part, like, you know, games like Call of Duty or Gears or Halo, like it's pretty simple. Kill the other team. There's sometimes an objective, and you got to follow that. And after watching it for a little bit, even if you've never played it before, you start to get an understanding. But like I completely get when people don't, and then they kind of turn their noses up. Like for me, like I don't understand all the nuances of baseball.
Right.
I stopped playing baseball after the ball was no longer sitting on a little tee for me as a kid.
Same.
So I was like, okay, I'm done with this sport. And now like watching a baseball game is really boring to me because I don't understand, you know, why they throw a certain pitch or why they make a certain move or what the hand signals mean. And you know, there's people who can sit there and, like you said, watch football, and they can say, oh, the defense is lining up this way, so they're going to do this, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And I think when you do that, you get more engrossed and invested in like the game, and so it's like the experience. So, you know, if anyone wants to get involved in esports and like be more passionate about spectating, then play the game, even not at a competitive level, but it makes it fascinating when you can say like, oh my god, they did that. Like there's no way I could do that.
Yeah. Obviously, knowing more about the game. Like, so for me, I noticed this pretty heavily when I very recently, like probably less than a year ago, started playing League. Knew nothing about it. Like I played, turned it on, got confused with items, didn't know which max Q or whatever it is. Like I always get, and it was too much for me at first. But when I put in some time, and then like now I watch the LCS every week and the LAC as much as I can, like you see some nasty stuff that happens that, like, if I would have watched it a year and a half ago, it's like he killed him. Like, cool. Like you don't
look at the
understand
pretty
the
colors.
skill. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely, and I guess that's the same with anything: sports, esports, chess, spelling bees, you know, whatever it ends up being. Yeah. But so something. What is your take on? Because Gears doesn't have a VOD review built in the game, does it?
No.
So I know Call of Duty did it at one point. I don't know if the current one does, because I'm very behind. But I know it had it at one point, and I know that was a huge tool. Mm-hmm. Do you think, has Gears ever had that in any of them? Do you know why?
I don't. It's I actually released a video, and it was like my 5 things that I think Gears 5 needs.
Yeah.
And that was like a big point was having an in-game replay system.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't understand why that's not kind of a default feature, because it helps so many different avenues of a game. You know, for the esports perspective, take Halo, for example, like Halo 3, right? Halo 3 had a theater system, and Halo 3 was Xbox 360, so it's not like a generational console thing, or the technology's not there or whatever. If they could do it on the Xbox 360, then it should be possible on everything. But you have this system where like you can go, okay, I want to go look at that game and I want to analyze it, what I did wrong or what the movements of the enemy team was, and you can kind of figure out what teams are doing, what you could do better, new strategies, and you can fly a little camera around and see everything, which is phenomenal. So you have that esports perspective where it's like a more in-depth replay rather than just, for me, recording whatever is on my screen, which is how I do it now.
POV,
So like I might miss something because I only have so much field of view that I can record. That being said, you also have like the content creation side of it, where like Halo 3, like that was like the prime time for Halo montages and like YouTube content, because it gave creators so much more in terms of tools. Like, oh, this was a really cool clip. So like it's great that you can get like a headshot, you know, whatever, across the map, blind fire, no, what, you know, whatever. And have it recorded from your POV, but then to be able to go back in a replay and get cinematic angles of like the bullet traveling slow motion and they hitting them in the head and like their POV, and like just getting those angles and those cinematics that like make the content that much better is another really useful tool. So it's like super important for me to see that come into Gears of War for so many perspectives. I think it would help. I mean, look at CSGO stuff. Like,
oh my God,
people can do so much with Counter-Strike because it's open. It's open source. So you can, you know, go in and you can make what's Nikki HD?
Yeah.
She's like that insane editor who like made professional clips of like pro players doing really cool stuff look like a completely different game because she's super talented. and that content does so well. Frag movies and Counter-Strike in general are really like hot content. So the fact that other games who also have an esports side don't want to do that or don't include that, it seems like what are you thinking? Like it's doable.
So is the content seen in Gears? Is there like, how big is, like, obviously people stream, but like, and you mentioned Halo, like there was big red versus blue, like people did, like you could do anything in Halo 3 as far as content went, but is there a lot of content on YouTube for Gears of War?
There's a small community that makes consistent content for Gears, and a lot of it honestly is a catered towards a Spanish speaking audience, because Gears of War is really popular in Mexico, and but there are some like YouTubers who are, you know, like they're big for Gears. They're anywhere from 60,000 to 100,000 subscribers, which is actually really great on YouTube. Who make consistent Gears of War content. But a lot of it is like the news or like first gameplay of looking with a character. So it's, even though like it's great that they're making content, and a lot of them are friends. So if any of them hear this, I'm not knocking them at all. But it's the same stuff over and over again. Gears of War used to have a really like popular montage community. People were really creative. There was editors who were really talented and actually like would go into Unreal Engine and download the Gears assets and like make custom scenes to like get those cinematics. But with the current generation Gears 4, you can't do that. At least from the editors that I've been speaking to, you can't. So I think that there was like a lot of things that changed, and it kind of added more restrictions. And because Gears 4 has been out for almost 3 years at this point, the content has gotten kind of stale. Where if again you compare it to like an old game like Halo 3, even though it's an old game, you had theater mode, which gave all the montagers any cinematic angle of anything that they ever wanted ever. Plus you had Forge, which was like revolutionary, because now it's not only just like the maps that the game shipped with or whatever DLC they sell to you, it's whatever you want to create. And I think it was Halo 4 or Halo 5, where they like they had that Forge map that was called like Valhalla, and it was like 3 multiplayer maps that were blank all on one thing. So like you could create, like I remember people created like golf courses, and Griff Ball came, and like all these, like there was MLG maps that were Forge maps. So like having that system keeps the content fresh, because like, okay, Bungie's not going to release us any new maps,
right?
But I'll go create one that's really cool and play it with my friends and upload that video, and then I can upload it to file share through the in-game system because they thought about that. And it's like having a Steam Workshop but on console. It's just, it makes games fresh.
I feel like I just gotta find whoever pulled that plug and beat them, because like, I mean, so that was huge nostalgia for me. Was like, or remembering Halo 3 is like, you know, that was probably where I poured most of my console gaming time into that, and COD 4.
Yeah.
But like, just the creative aspect of it, because it like every day it's new, and you go on file share and it's like, which one's trending today? Oh, I haven't seen this one yet. What's this? Oh, it's like that. And
it could be like the dumbest stuff, like people trying to create the biggest explosion, or it could be like new mini games to play. Like I always like playing the ones that were like grinders, where it was like a ramp that you had to run up, and then like they created like bombs at the top that were blowing up tanks and stuff. So all the tank parts were like rolling down the hill, and you had to dodge them and not get splattered. So like things like that, like that's not Halo at all, but it's in the Halo game. And I've seen even crazier stuff in Halo 5, because apparently their Forge was super in depth, and people were making like what's the old Frogger? They made like Frogger out of Halo.
Wait,
and
I did
like
not see that.
Yeah, so it's like
that's cool.
It's like really crazy things that people can do, and if you give them the tools, like even these kind of it's not developer tools, but they can come up with amazing things. I mean, look at Minecraft. Minecraft is built around that idea.
Yeah, that, and I mean, Fortnite kind of does, not to that extent, but Fortnite kind of does that.
Yeah, Fortnite added prop hunt now.
Prop hunt? Yeah. That was the first time I saw prop hunt was like a Gary's mod.
Yeah, Gary's mod is
something. Yeah, but that I mean, prop hunt is fun. And then I remember Call of Duty did it on, I think the first time they did it was Modern Warfare Remastered, and it was like, now I can do this on console. This is cool.
Yeah, like that. You give people the tools to be creative, and they'll come up with amazing things. So I would love to see that for Gears, because we've missed it.
Yeah. When does like the competitive circuit go to, like, how many more games are like LANs are in this circuit? Because it switches over soon, right?
The last one was in Boston a few months ago. So
I know Gears.
So you know, we won, obviously. Imagine. But no, so we're waiting for Gears 5 now. The release date is September 10th. And our first look at the multiplayer will be us competing at a tournament July 13th and 14th for E-League. So
you're just going to walk in and play the game? Cold.
Yeah. I apparently, I think we get like one day to kind of experiment and make up stuff.
I think so. If I remember correctly, Black Ops 2 did a tournament like that, where I'm sure they had some time before, and it's like, I feel like things like that are great, you know, getting the feedback from a player, because I'm sure they're going to collect your guys' feedback.
I'm sure.
That. So, you know, like, this sucks, like, you fix this now, you eliminate that in the early true life cycle of the game, and you know, I think that's definitely good. I think that's good for the game.
Oh yeah, I mean, you want feedback from the people who are playing it, because like developers like have their own bias of like, you know, should be I think this is cool and I created it, and therefore like I want to keep it. And then you have 100 people tell you like, no, sorry, like I know that's your baby, but it sucks. You need to change it.
Real.
Which, you know, is a hard pill to swallow. But Coalition is good about getting feedback from their players. So I'm expecting there to be like good kind of give and take, and I'm really expecting like a really good a really good product.
Yeah.
And speaking of the topic of map creators and editors, that is something that they've announced is going to be part of Gears 5.
Cool.
So that was also on my wish list for going into this game, and they announced it at E3 that they have a new game mode, and part of that game mode, you know, it's going to ship with certain maps, and then there's also going to be a map builder for that game mode, and that they'll be transitioning into the like regular versus multiplayer.
Oh, cool.
So it won't be on launch, but hopefully soon, so people can come up with, you know, cool custom games like, I don't know, zombies like it was in Halo. And
that was fun. Oh, man. Infected? Is that what
Infected. Infected.
Yeah, that was fun stuff. So you have July 13th and 14th.
Yeah.
You have the first look, and then you have, what is that? 2 months? August, September, 2 months.
Yeah.
So like, what do you guys do as professional Gears of War players do in that downtime? Is that just like your vacation in between games, or like, do you do? What does that look like for you guys?
We've kind of been on vacation for like a month and a half, 2 months since Boston, because we really haven't done anything other than just kind of like visit families and do our own thing. When Gears of War 5, so we have the launch tournament, and then the beta actually comes out like a week after. I might have the dates wrong, but it comes out not long after the tournament that showcases the multiplayer in July. So we'll actually be able to come home and have like fun playing the beta, and then that'll close whenever. I don't know how long they're going to do it for. Yeah. And then I imagine like maybe a month later we'll have the game. So
it's really not that much of a long vacation.
Yeah.
Some time off. Yeah.
That'll just give us like time to like, figure some things out. I doubt there's going to be any tournaments for the beta. I mean, maybe like an online one or something, and then we'll kind of get an understanding of what we're going to be getting ourselves into for the next 3 years.
So is that the life cycle for Gears?
Usually, yeah.
So the game ships September, say 1, whatever it is.
September 10th. Yeah.
When does that first event typically be? Like October, November?
Well, for Gears of War 4, the game came out October, and then we had an event end of October that was like a small invitational.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So like we had that, and we won that without dropping a map, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then the first real event was actually Thanksgiving weekend, so it was like a month later.
Yeah.
So wild. I don't think they're gonna do like that close, but it's possible.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it sounds like Gears of War is gonna be a lot of fun again. Because I watch it as much as I can, but I only got so much time in the day. But I obviously don't know as much about it as some other games. But every time I turn Gears of War on, it's like, especially at an event, it's people are passionate, man. It's like you see. I remember seeing videos of Icy standing up and just like screaming at people, and it's just like great stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a few viral clips from our team. Gilbert saying, oh, you think you're gonna win this? Put your bank account on it. And
yeah. That was pretty recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was maybe like 6 months ago or something, like, which is relatively recent. I mean, like that's one of the things that sets Gears apart as an esports community. Like League of Legends and CS:GO to an extent, and like a lot of those like Overwatch, they're very much the professional approach.
Sure.
And when you think of that, traditional sports professional franchised approach, often like the people who stick out are the teams that are super dominant.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the one-off players who are a little bit edgy, like the Marshawn Lynch, you know what I mean? Where I'm just here so I don't get fined. Like that kind of stuff is like the people who like kind of make a legacy for themselves.
Yeah.
The greats and then like the edgy. And for us, we kind of have both on one team. Like the players are super professional when it need to be, but when it's at the competition in the heat of the moment, you see that like, oh, we're going to tell you we're better than you.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Gears like allows you to kind of express, which is fun because it adds to the spectator part of it. Like you feel the energy from the players. So like if you're in the crowd and you're like, I don't understand Gears, but then you see the players standing up and going like, you got destroyed and whatever the case may be, and usually it's much more foul than that.
Yeah.
It's like okay, yeah, you did get destroyed. Like sit down, and then everybody kind of gets more involved in it. So when you experience that and you experience that energy and that passion, I compare it to like being the UFC of esports.
Sure.
Like like they encourage the trash talk and they encourage you to be yourself. And if you want to be like, we're just here to have a good time and best of luck to them, then you can be that way. And if you want to be like, these kids suck and I have no respect for them and I can't wait to wipe the floor with them, you can be that way.
Sure.
And it just adds a completely different dynamic that really no other esports are doing right now.
So with all that craziness and the back and forth and the trash talk and all that, do the players like walk away from an event and like, are they all cool with each other, or are there like genuine like foul feelings towards each other? like in the scene, like without putting anybody on blast? Like,
yeah, no. So there are times where things get said that are over a line, and sometimes it'll cause bad blood. A lot of times, like it starts online.
Sure. Okay.
A player will teabag in a scrim or do something disrespectful in a scrimmage, and then that'll carry over into trash talk on Twitter, and then they play each other at the event, and that's kind of where like it gets more serious. Honestly, like the worst case scenario actually happened to one of my old players, Icy, where he got punched, and
I remember that.
and they would like he got sucker punched and lost a tooth.
Yeah.
And we still won that tournament. That was before the tournament started, and he played toothless. So like that's kind of the worst case scenario, but that's like also pretty rare because most of these people, like they understand that like banter and trash talk in the game is not ill will towards the other people.
Right.
And I think that sometimes, especially with like a lot of the amateur players, I see it. But it's always hard to tell too, because like I'll see two players talking about like how they're going to beat the living crap out of each other at the next event if they see each other. And then I'll see those two players shaking hands and saying GG's at that event. So it's like I think a lot of people get worked up in the heat of the moment, don't know how to have that professional filter.
Sure.
And they're not professional like the same level like my guys are in terms of like they're paid to do this.
Right.
So they don't have that same like kind of responsibility on their shoulders to act a certain way. And Gears has always kind of been like a rougher culture because of the nature of the game. So I think like there's a line, and most of the competitive community understands that line, like especially in the pro side. But once you start going out of the pro, like out of the top 12 teams, that line gets blurred a little bit more, and a lot of players start to struggle with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with having that line, you say it's top 12 or whatever that line ends up being. Do you think franchising fits in Gears? And whether you think it fits or not, would you be interested in it being in Gears?
I think franchising could fit at some point. I think Gears needs to just have a really good game.
Okay.
And I think that's like Gears of War 4 was a step up in my opinion, but there was also so much wrong with it still.
Sure.
And I've been very open about critiquing it, so I'm not like shy about saying this. But there was a lot that they messed up on. Yeah. And I think it was near the end of the game's life cycle where they started to realize, okay, like, yeah, we actually shot ourselves in the foot a few times. We can fix this. Yeah. But it was too late, where you've already kind of lost a large audience of people who were playing and going like, okay, we've been giving this feedback and there's no change. So I think that a lot of those efforts got pushed into, okay, we messed up a lot of things in this. We're going to learn from that, and we're going to make 5 even better. At least that's what I'm hoping. So I think that, we can just kind of hope for the best going into 5, and then that good quality game will help encourage more people to compete because they'll just enjoy and I think have that passion for playing the game. And there'll be more content, which will get more eyes on it. And then I think that's how they see Gears grow to the point where franchising could be viable.
Sure.
I think where it is right now, especially with like the prices that are thrown around for other games like CWL, we don't know any confirmed prices, but like we're talking tens of millions of dollars, which seems nutty for a Call of Duty franchise spot.
Yeah.
Unless you're, like your Optic.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to see that play into Gears, especially when like a lot of players, outside of top 8 weren't even paid salary.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think if they release a good product and they can like organically grow the player base and the audience of the game, then franchising could be viable. I also think the franchising model in general for esports still needs a lot of work, because
I could agree with that.
There's not like a whole lot of people doing it right.
Yeah.
I think that like in terms of League of Legends, Team Liquid is doing it right, where they spent the money because like, okay, we're gonna have this spot, we want to be the best, and they spent the money to have a really good team. All jokes of EU greater than NA or whatever aside, and that helps them get that extra exposure, and then they're doing the content around them, and so like they're attacking this opportunity from multiple angles where not everybody can do that. Like a lot of people can just pay the entrance fee, and then you don't see as much behind the scenes content and stuff like that from like a Clutch Gaming. same thing with like the Overwatch League. Like there's some teams that are just really good, and then there are some teams who are like super executing on the branding side, like Outlaws. And then there are some teams that like you really don't know a whole lot about, and they're not doing that well.
Yeah.
So I think the franchising model, like the region-based idea that Overwatch League has, is interesting. And I think people are starting to buy into it.
Sure.
And it clearly works for traditional sports, but it's also like much more established and seasoned. So I think they're paving a way, but it's a bumpy road to pave.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to expect was going to come around eventually, and you had to expect it was going to have road bumps or roadblocks or whatever. But I think it's important. I think it's a good concept, but it's important that if the game decides to go that route, that they need to do a good job of like being flexible.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that could be done better in both the probably with the LCS and with the Overwatch League. I'm sure tons, especially from the player side, because I'm not a player, I don't know anything about that stuff, but I'm sure there's stuff that they could do better for them or for the organization or whatever it ends up being. But the flexibility, I think, is super important.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, for a lot of people, it's a business. So It's like figuring out how that like you get the best return for that business.
Yeah.
And franchising costs a lot of money.
Hell yeah.
And it's a difficult thing where you go, okay, like I've invested this money, I have this team, I'm paying their salaries, like how do I make money off this? Because it's not just simply like, okay, well, let's put their faces on shirts and we'll sell a ton of them. Like,
so it doesn't work like that?
No, unfortunately. You have to get their personalities out there. Yeah, it's one of the things, that I'm blessed to say as having been a part of Optic. It's it helps you kind of understand that whole aspect where, Optic got their popularity because Hector was brilliant in the fact that he made the players, or at least the ones who were willing to comply, put themselves out there and encouraged them to do so, and led by example with his own vlogs and his own YouTube content. And, that made players like Scump and people like Nadeshot start going, okay, like I want to do this. And then they got that kind of like rivalry between the two of them as they were on the same team.
Exactly.
And that competition pushed them to do like just the grind out the early stages and put themselves out there. And that's why you see these like people who are basically phenomenons of esports, which, obviously contradicts people like Faker, who was just like this quiet Korean boy who was just insanely good. The content was more just him being ridiculous at a professional level.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, his content is just raw mechanical skill.
And like even now, like I don't understand Korean, so like I don't know exactly what he's saying, but I tune into his stream just to watch how good he is.
Right,
and
me too.
And so do 25,000 other people.
There's so many people, yeah.
And that's on Twitch, so that's not even like the big platform for like Asia and the East.
Yeah.
So it's just that kind of shows what content does for people in esports, and I think that's where you really get like the names out there. That's really how you build like your LeBrons of esports is the content.
Yeah, I agree. It's a huge thing. So, I mean, well, to segue, content is probably, I know, a big part of what you're doing on the side as well. I know you stream a lot. So what exactly does, all of that mean to your career and what you do on a day-to-day?
Well, obviously I had to embrace the Optic culture where it's like, content, it's a content org that also has good esports teams.
Yeah.
So I knew early on, like my dream was to be part of Optic, and I started uploading to YouTube and set like that goal for my, I was watching Hector's vlogs like it was like a visualization of the Bible. So I was like, okay, he says upload daily, I'm going to upload daily. I'll upload twice daily, like, which I never did, but I was uploading daily for like a year, and it worked. It sounds tough, and it sounds ridiculous, but he was right. And there's a reason he's successful. Like I uploaded daily for the better part of a year, and I saw my channel go from 0. I started a new channel and I saw it go from 0 to like 10,000 subs, which in a year is not like a lot, but doing mostly Gears of War content, which is like a quote unquote dead game that's being revived, I thought that was great. So that kind of encouragement from like the Optic fan base, and like obviously that really helped. It's just like a vibe, so to speak, of like, you know, you're part of Optic, and that's what you got to do, is you got to do content.
Right.
There are some people who aren't cut out for it. Like there's some
Sure.
people who don't want to put like the time or the effort in,
Yeah.
or just aren't comfortable, you know, like they can be on camera, but they don't like want to go edit themselves on camera.
Exactly.
I'm the same way. Like
Yeah.
I used to stream League of Legends with no webcam because I just hated being on camera.
Right.
And I kind of like had to train myself to do that, to be comfortable with that. So I think like there's that factor. And then there's also, I keep mentioning Hector. I swear I'm not like trying to kiss his ass. When we first joined Optic, we were in a Skype call with him, and he said, I want you guys to know that this isn't it. This isn't like you've made it. This isn't, oh my God, I've joined Optic Day. This is where it starts. Like, this is where you now have to like bust your butts to like continue. You got to this level. The hard work starts now. And I think like that was something, at least for me, that kind of like I held on to, was like, okay, like, yeah, you're right. Like I got here, and you know, my team and I earned this, but I want to earn more. Like this is a platform that can help support a lot of things that I want to do. And I got to utilize this. Sure. So I think like, you know, content is king, and as he's said, and it's part of the culture. And I think the people who embrace that and are good with it, you know, get their personalities out there and like say, hey world, this is me. You're going to have that audience that relates to you. And that's kind of how you develop yourself, like in this industry specifically, where like, you know, we're in an era where everybody's so connected. Sure. And now you're like, that's like the world is so connected, and you're putting that into esports where like you're actually digitally connected 24/7. You have to be. You have to have a Twitter. You have to have an Instagram. Like you can't be pro without those things for some reason. So it's like that content is super important. And there's a lot to learn. There's a lot more for me to learn. I'm learning how to do a podcast right now, but it's fun. Once you start getting used to it and getting comfortable, it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
for sure. So after, you know, you stream on the side, you do your coaching, you manage a team. Do you have like an end goal in esports? Or what is your, if you have one, like pipe dream, if it's a pipe dream, or like something within reach or whatever it is, do you have like an end goal in esports?
Yeah, and I think I realized I went off on a tangent. I don't know if I even answered your last question.
What was the last question?
I don't know.
It was just about your streaming.
Okay. Yeah, I stream and upload to YouTube videos occasionally. Yeah. I wish I did it more actively, but I'm stressed right now. Anyways, my end goal, I mean, esports is like the career for me. Sure. My mom always told me, find what you love to do and figure out a way to make money doing it.
That is an important thing to tell your kid. For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's why I've kind of been doing it too. So
exactly.
I appreciate that.
And I think a lot of people, you know, there's all those inspirational speakers who are like, life is too short to not be happy and stuff like that. And like, yeah, that sounds cliche, but it's also true. Like, so like, there's people saying it in other ways. It's just the way my mom said it was like the way that kind of like, she's like, okay, you got to be smart and you got to make money, but you should figure out how you can do that based off like what your passion is. Yeah. So, you know, it's been video games, and I always thought that I had to go into game design and development to have a career that was with my passion. And then esports kind of like just blew up in like 2012. Yeah. And while I was in college trying to go into video game design and struggling, and I realized, okay, like, screw this. I can take classes that are topics that I find interesting and focus on esports, because there's no esports degree. So like I can just study something that appeals to me. So I actually like finished my degree in psychology thinking, okay, having an understanding of how people think and behave will help me in esports, because it's so culturally diverse. And, you know, my team is 4 different ethnicities. So you have that aspect, and you have like, you know, just all kinds of different like mental things that play into esports. So I figured like that was a good degree. I've got that part done. I've got like that certificate that says I'm special. And now I figure out how to make money doing it. And managing and coaching, like coaching is obviously like I love doing. I love working with my team.
Sure.
I don't think it's the end all be all for me. Like, I don't think I'm going to go down, like, when this team is like done and when these 5 players have retired, I don't think I'm going to go, okay, on to the next team.
Right. Yeah.
It's something that I would consider, but I think for me, I love taking care of the players. I love making sure that they can focus on everything game related, and I'll focus on everything else.
Okay.
And so, like, to me, that's being like a player manager, a general manager. I have business ownership experience. I started, owned, and ran, and then sold a donut shop in a resort town to my biggest competition. So, like, I understand a decent bit of like business management and you know, like the basics of that. I understand how to relate to players. I've been on the stages both as a player and as a coach. So, like, I know the pressures and the stresses that they go through.
Right.
I understand, like, the human behavior aspect, so to speak. So it's like, I think business management is going to be kind of that, or at least esports business management is going to be like, you know, that area where I'll be truly happy and then also successful.
Yeah. I think it's an easy transition, especially for your position. You know, you expect that a player who gets too old to play or washed up or however you describe it will transition into that, but that's not always the case. But obviously you have a unique, I think, position where you're at right now, and it's a very easy transition to do like all business.
Well, not only that, but like I got a taste of it too. True. So, you know, like I was promoted when we moved to Texas. I was brought on to be a player support coordinator.
Right.
So I was like, it's like a fancy term for a team manager for all the teams. So like any team that needed help, I was helping, whether it be Optics PUBG or Optics COD or CS or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And then I was one of the people who understood the Optic brand, and I got promoted. I think because of like I worked hard, and that reason of understanding the Optic brand, I got promoted to the assistant GM, and that was like a taste of like what I want to do. Sure. Like being with a brand that like means and meant so much to me, and then having like a not necessarily like a creative say, but like I don't fully know what Hector's vision was for Optic, but I know that he was like working towards some things, and I wanted to like keep that kind of tradition alive and keep those things going forward despite everything else that was going on. And I didn't have like the power to do so because there was so much like, I guess, like unnecessary almost structure of like people who were making decisions that anyways, I think that like I didn't get the opportunity to kind of like do everything that I wanted to do. And I wish I would have had more of a chance to work like alongside Hector and learn from him because he's clearly brilliant at what he does. And he built something that like I fell in love with when I was, 15.
Right.
So, or 16. So like, I think that there was like a lot of opportunity and like a lot of like kind of teasing, like dangling like the toy in front of me or like the treat. And like, I got that small little taste, but it wasn't everything that I wanted to do. So like now I want it really, really bad. Like, so that's, I think where I'm going to end up is doing something like esports management with a brand that I'm passionate about, and that like appreciates like my ideas and perspective. Sure. And I think that's like where like I'll see like the most happiness and success for me and my future in esports.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, it'll be a pretty seamless transition, and it makes sense. I think that's I have no doubt that there is a strong future in that for you. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem, dude. So yeah, I mean, I think I covered my questions here and all this, so I don't. Is there anything that we didn't go through that you want to get off your chest or say anything in general or anything like that?
Oh man, there's a lot of things I'd love to get off my chest.
That you can get off your chest.
Yeah, no, that's more of a Dear Diary thing than a podcast thing.
No, I hear that.
No, I just think one, thank you. Because
no problem. Thank you.
This is awesome. I feel like I've talked too much.
No.
So I feel bad.
No. This is the goal of this podcast. I got me, who asks the questions and then shuts up and then lets people talk. So that is my goal.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity being on because I love doing this, and it's always insightful, and it helps you kind of reflect too. Like when you get the chance to talk out loud, like I don't know if you've experienced this with like doing the past ones, but when you get to kind of like talk your thoughts out loud and you have someone prompting questions to kind of keep them going, I think it's almost like therapeutic in a way, where it's like, okay, like now I've kind of like fully digested like this thing because I've talked about it, or like maybe I understand it better because I'm like kind of, thinking about things. And so outside of just like, it's cool to do content with you, and we haven't worked together in like
a few months,
way too long. It's cool to like have that opportunity, and so thank you for that as well.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I agree. Like the first podcast I was on, I was asked the questions, and therapeutic is a good way to put it, because I got it. I don't know what it is. I've never talked. I've never done content. This has never been me. I tried streaming on Twitch, once or twice, didn't work. And then I got asked to be on a podcast. I was on a podcast, and I was like, this is interesting. Like, this is cool. This is fun. Let me do this. Let me see how I like it. And now we're here.
Especially when you're with the right people, because it feels more natural. It's like a conversation, and like, I don't know, like you and I haven't hung out outside of the office a whole lot, but like, I feel like we never had issues like talking to each other, just sitting down and chatting when we did. So it's like, it's helpful to have like that aspect of it. It's like,
exactly.
I don't know, I talk a lot, but we're both like laid back people, and can just kind of like vibe out and chat about whatever, and it hopefully makes good content. Hopefully people enjoyed listening to this.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, if you did, leave a thumbs up. So I mean, I guess that's a good segue out. Whatever platform you're listening to it, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, like, subscribe. Actually, back up. Got to make sure you follow Nick. What is your handle? Optic_ashes?
So on Twitter and Instagram, I made this super difficult for myself for no reason. On Twitter and Instagram, I am at Thy Ashes, THY. Right. And then on YouTube, it's Ashes Gaming. And then on Twitch, it's Thy Ashes. I need to get Thy Ashes on YouTube, basically. But
so, Thy Ashes. If not,
follow me.
I'll probably already follow me. But at any rate, check him out. Leave a like on the podcast. I would really appreciate it. Let me know what I can do better. And I'll see you in the